Yo, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent might have just revealed who caused the recent Bitcoin crash. And it's not who you think. While everyone is focused on Binance and CZ, what if Coinbase is to blame for the Bitcoin crash? As crazy as that sounds, you'll need to listen in very carefully to what Scott Bessent just said on CNBC this morning. Let's check out the clip.
Crypto bills moving forward, Bitcoin a little bit dicey here at this point. You wonder about the leverage in the system. Any comments?
Yeah, Joe, the history, if we take Bitcoin as a proxy for crypto, Bitcoin has a history of volatile movements. We went back and looked. I believe the average sell-off has been about 58%, and we're coming into that zip code right now. And crypto holders are mostly in it for the long term. They are used to the volatility, so it's important that everyone knows what they're buying. But part of the volatility here is self-induced because, and this is one thing where there has been a bipartisan working group and Democrats. There is a group of Democrats who want to work with Republicans on getting a market structure bill. It's called the Clarity Bill. But there are a group of crypto firms who have been blocking it. They said, well, we'd rather have no legislation than this legislation. And that doesn't seem to have been good for the overall crypto community. So, in a time when we are having one of these historically volatile sell-offs, I think some clarity on the Clarity Bill would give great comfort to the market, and we could move forward from there. So it's very important to get this done. And I think if the Democrats were to take the House, which is far from my best case, then the prospects of getting a deal done will just fall apart. I mean, look what the Democrats did to crypto under the Biden administration. It was almost an extinction event, and President Trump has worked to make the U.S. the digital asset capital of the world. There's a lot of innovation that goes on adjacent to crypto in the blockchain, in DeFi. So I think it's important to get this Clarity Bill done as soon as possible and on the president's desk this spring.
So a couple things to unpack there. First, it's crazy because Opti and I were watching CNBC this morning, believe it or not. And towards the end of that interview with Joe Kernan, they asked him, like, hey, what's going on with the Bitcoin price? And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was essentially blaming some of the downward volatility on the fact that there is, he used the pun, I'm going to use the pun, that there is no regulatory clarity. I don't know how much I believe in that. I mean, it could play a little bit into the price, but I think that this is a great opportunity to take, an event that's happening and to potentially capitalize on it politically. And again, assigning the blame, right? So basically saying, look, the Trump administration has done everything in its power to try to get this bill passed. However, because of the opposing political party and because of some other Bitcoin / I would say crypto, not really Bitcoin, crypto companies, the bill basically has grinded to a halt. And then he confirmed what I've been saying for the last week or so, that if the Democrats, and it looks like there's a high probability that they do take back the House, there is like a 0 chance that this bill is even going to get passed. But the question is, what is in this bill? Why is Coinbase against this bill in the first place? I'm going to pull up the tweet. And what we've been mentioning over the last couple of weeks is I haven't been a really big fan of the bill. Like, they passed the Genius Act, which is the Stablecoin Act, with so much enthusiasm, with bipartisanship, because again, it would spread the use of the US dollar worldwide. But the Clarity Act, which would be beneficial towards the Bitcoiners, the Bitcoin industry, and the crypto industry as a whole, that it seems like Congress has been dragging their feet a little bit more on that. And specifically, it seems like that bill, this is again my personal opinion here, got hijacked by the banking industry to make it so that the bill protects the banking industry rather for it to be a favorable piece of legislation for the Bitcoin and crypto industry as a whole. So again, like I understand where Scott Bessent is coming in regards to, listen, if we don't get this passed now, if we lose the midterms, this isn't going to get passed. I understand the argument where he says this actually might be a reason, a cause as to why we've seen this downward sell pressure. Where I disagree with him on is, listen, the fact is that I truly do believe this bill got hijacked a little bit. I do believe that this bill is being structured in a way to protect the banks. And I'll put it to you guys bluntly and simply. And again, it's unfortunate that for some reason, Bitcoin has to get involved into all of this, because the big stop on this bill is banks don't want crypto companies, crypto tokens to offer interest to their users, because that would be competition for the banks. Banks right now offer a lot, like it's a minuscule amount of interest, right? If you have money in a bank, they're supposed to pay you for that, because they're taking that money and they're lending that out to other people. They're not paying that to you today. If you have below, I think it's like a $1,500 balance in a bank account, you actually have to pay the bank a maintenance fee to, keep your money in the bank. And that's really what's stopping this bill. It's unfortunate that Bitcoin gets lumped into all of this, because as a Bitcoiner, the thing that I'm really focused on in this bill is that if this bill gets codified, it protects the right of Bitcoiners to self-custody. And on a federal level, it's not an executive order from a president. On a legislative level, it protects the right to self-custody. And that's incredibly important. You guys know how I feel about self-custody, how important self-custody is to our movement. And that's really what I'm focused on as a Bitcoiner. The other thing that I would be focused on, but it's not included in the bill, is, again, getting rid of capital gains, or at least having a limit amount. So like if you spend $1,000 worth of Bitcoin or $500 worth of Bitcoin, you don't have to pay capital gains on that. That was discussed. I don't know if it's in the final version of the bill, but as a Bitcoiner, those are the really only two things I really care about. Yes, the regulatory clarity is good for the business environment in the United States, without a shadow of a doubt. But again, it sucks that Bitcoin is getting dragged in to this whole, DeFi / crypto / argument, right? Which is kind of unfortunate. Anyways, I'm going to show you guys the official reasons as to why Coinbase is giving, as to why they don't want to pass this bill. And let's check it out. So here's Brian Armstrong. Brian Armstrong is obviously the co-founder and CEO of Coinbase. And what he's saying is, after reviewing the Senate banking draft text over the last 48 hours, Coinbase unfortunately can't support the bill as written. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Coinbase, guys. Coinbase is the largest crypto exchange or business that's publicly traded on the stock market right now. And they hold about 12% of all the Bitcoin in their custody. That doesn't mean it belongs to them, but they hold it on behalf of the ETF, on behalf of institutions, on behalf of their customers. So they're a major player, and they have played a major role in all of the legislation that has been happening in Washington, D.C. They're a lobbying behemoth, right? That's why you see pictures of Brian Armstrong in Washington, D.C. in the Imperial Capitol, in his suit, and he's talking and he's shaking hands, and, he's making, he's doing what he needs to do, right, for the betterment of his company. But anyhow, let's get to what his official reasons are, and then we'll kind of compare and contrast that with what Scott Bessent said. So he said there are too many issues, including a de facto ban on tokenized equities. As a Bitcoiner, why do equities need to be tokenized? I understand from Coinbase's perspective why they need to be tokenized, because they decided to go down that route, right? But as a Bitcoiner, don't really care about that. DeFi prohibitions, giving the government unlimited access to your financial records and removing your right to privacy. Again, I do kind of care about that. maybe not the DeFi side of things. I'm not really a DeFi type of person. I'm a Bitcoiner. But at the same time, again, it's what I was saying earlier. It's like they took this bill, they judoed it, and they made it about protecting the government and protecting the big banks rather than it being beneficial towards the industry. And most importantly, allowing innovation to happen, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, as a Bitcoiner, DeFi, which I don't really actually define as decentralized, but DeFi allows a lot of things to happen without any central party involved, without any middleman involved, better said, right? So you can, like, transact between altcoin 1 and altcoin A and et cetera, et cetera. So, they obviously don't want that to happen. They want a middleman. They want, a centralized exchange, because with the centralized exchange, with the middleman, you could put, regulations on that. Erosion of the CFTC's authority, stifling innovation, and making it subservient to the SEC, which is, again, kind of the opposite of what we heard initially. Initially, the whole thing was actually that the industry was going to move away from the SEC and actually towards the CFTC, specifically Bitcoin. And this is where it's unfortunate, because Bitcoin is seen as a commodity. So Bitcoin would fall under the CFTC. But again, because Coinbase is involved in a lot of altcoin trading and a lot of altcoin volume, again, we kind of get dragged into this. And then the last part, he says, draft amendments that would kill rewards on stablecoins, allowing banks to ban their competition. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, is the crux of the issue. This is literally, forget about all of this stuff up here. Yes, it's important, et cetera, et cetera. But this is why it's at a standstill right now. This is the crux of it. And it also reveals the incentives of the banks, which is crazy. This reminds me of the Andreas Antonopoulos days, like, where he calls the banks, the C word that I don't want to say. But it looks like they're not in the business of competing. They don't want to compete, right? They want to use their moat to retain the power and to retain the power of influence that they have over the U.S. financial system. And the worst thing that could happen to them in their eyes is if people started to use alternatives than regular checking accounts. I personally know people that have already done this. I personally know people that don't have bank accounts. They literally use their Cash App account as their bank account, right? I already know people that fall into this category. Now, the reason that stable coins freak out banks so much is because ultimately the way that these stable coins work is if you buy $1 worth of Tether or USDC, what happens is that they buy the US dollar equivalent of that. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going out and getting $1 worth of cash. What they're doing is that they're buying US treasuries, and those US treasuries actually give you interest. They give you return, right? So what better way to incentivize clients than, instead of those stablecoin companies collecting all the interest themselves, giving some of that interest back to their clients? And all of a sudden, those stablecoin companies and those stablecoin wallets would actually be extremely competitive to a regular checking account. A regular checking account, which charges you a maintenance fee if you have a balance under a certain amount, and just a stablecoin wallet, which you could download off the internet. You can send and receive payments globally all around the world, and it's paying you for you to keep your money there. Like, that sounds fantastic. Banks don't want that to happen. They want the status quo to remain. They want to be able to use money that you leave in their checking account or you leave in the savings account to lend to other people, and they want to retain the ability of not having to pay you interest to do just that, right? This isn't competition. This is not capitalism. I would consider this a form of crony capitalism, because they're using the government to basically protect their moat. Again, this is not unprecedented in American history. This has happened in American history, where you've had giant titans like Standard Oil or AT&T or some of the big airlines that use their political influence to get certain types of rules and regulations passed in law to protect their businesses. But this isn't competition. This is not free market capitalism. This is using the government to try to get your way. But it's funny, and there's an irony here. And the irony here is that it's the banks that are doing this, right? The same banks that are lecturing us about how bad Bitcoin is and how Bitcoin is a danger to the financial system, and that Bitcoin, is useless and it won't be used for anything else. These are the same banks that are lecturing us about how, they're holier than thou, and that they have the moral high ground, and then that they are the ones that ultimately, know what's best for you. And at the same time, when competition comes because of technological innovation, instead of them adapting and competing on the free market, what do? They go to big government and they say, please, daddy, protect me from the crypto industry. So, this is essentially what's happening. This is the reason that the Clarity Act is at a standstill. And, I love what Scott Bessent has done. I love what the Trump administration has done for the Bitcoin industry as a whole. It's unfortunate that the Clarity Act not only includes protections for Bitcoiners and the Bitcoin industry, but it also includes protections for the crypto industry as a whole. We're conjoined at the hip when it comes to the Clarity Act, because I think if some of the things were separated in a separate bill, like the protect the right to self-custody or any of the pro-Bitcoin things, I think they would have passed by now. I think the only reason that the Clarity Act is being held hostage, essentially, is this last part that Brian Armstrong posted. And I think that he put it as the last part on purpose. Draft amendments that would kill rewards on stablecoins, allowing banks to ban their competition. So when he says rewards, he really means interest. He's using a different word, but that's what he's talking about, interest. So he goes on to say, we appreciate all the hard work by members of the Senate to reach a bipartisan outcome, but this version would be materially worse than the current status quo. We'd rather have no bill than a bad bill. Hopefully we can all get to a better draft. We'll keep fighting for all Americans and for economic freedom. Crypto needs to be treated on a level playing field with the rest of the financial services so we can build this industry in a safe and trusted way in America. And I got to say, as much as I disagree with Brian Armstrong's platform and, what they do, I agree with that. Like, this prohibitions giving the government unlimited access to your financial records and removing your right to privacy, it simultaneously, the daycare situation happens. Like, it's kind of like, rules for thee and not for me, rules for thee, but not for me. You guys get the point. So yeah, I mean, that's the situation. That's the TLDR. Scott Bessent is obviously acting in his own self-interest. He wants the bill to get passed. Coinbase is basically saying, look, like, nah, this isn't cool. This isn't fair. You're essentially giving the bank special treatment. That's true. But it also reveals, it pulls back the curtain, right? And it also tells you that we're winning, right? If you're being attacked, that means that you are worthy of being attacked. That means that you are a threat, right? Which is a good thing. But again, as Bitcoiners and a Bitcoin only show and a Bitcoin focused show, it's unfortunate that a lot of this stuff gets, commingled together. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to Opti. Opti, what are your thoughts on this? You did see this clip of Scott Bessent live with me this morning. We were watching, we're like, whoa. And it was immediately posted on Twitter right after the fact. I got to say, man, the fact that regularly programmed financial legacy media has to talk about Bitcoin is fantastic. That's insane. That's the Treasury Secretary of the United States on prime time financial networking and media, and they're literally asking him about Bitcoin. They're asking him, why is the price going down? What's the cause of this? And of course, he smartly and intelligently used that as a platform to make his case as to why the Clarity Act should be passed. Opti.
Yeah, well, first off, if you guys saw the beginning, of course, it was Joe Kernan, which we always joke is the best Bitcoin podcaster in the space because he's on national news and he does speak to people outside of the Bitcoin echo chamber. So I think it was fitting. Also, some context for this, CNBC or Squawk Box this morning was very hyping, or we're hyping this up a lot. They're like, we got a special interview with Scott Bessent. It was a 30-minute interview. We were all sitting there like, man, this is so long. Like usually it's like 5 minutes. And of course, Joe Kernan even said like very last minute, he's like, I got to ask you one more question. And then of course you guys saw the clip. Now, I do want to unpack a few things here. It is pretty interesting. The first part of that clip, Scott Bessent was like, look, we are in a 50% kind of pullback correction. Historically, on average, the pullback's around 58%. So you could read that as saying what Nico's been saying. Maybe the dip is going to dip more and we got a little lower to go. You could read that one way as well. You know, that's one of the things you could take away from that clip. Now, the second part, which it was a little cryptic, hence why we told you to really listen to what Scott Bessent was saying. He obviously didn't specifically pinpoint Coinbase as being the culprit here, but everyone that has been watching the news that we've been covering, if you watch the show with us, we all kind of know who are the main players in the space right now. And as Nico read the Coinbase tweet, that was the big kind of smoking gun around the last Clarity Act arguments that we saw the last 2 weeks or so. And to that story, as I said a couple of weeks ago, or I think it was 2 weeks ago, I do agree with what Brian Armstrong said. And like me and Nico, we don't really agree with Brian Armstrong a lot. But at a certain point, as I said a couple of days ago, it is almost like I'm siding with the people that are in the industry. Maybe they're not, they're not passing the purity tests, but to some extent, Brian Armstrong does have, he needs to be favorable to Bitcoin. So maybe he's not perfect, and maybe a lot of times he does more damage than good.
I don't know if
I think I'm siding with Brian Armstrong.
Yeah, let me get to that.
Yeah.
So the enemy of your enemy,
exactly.
The enemy of your enemy is your friend. I'm not saying Brian Armstrong is 100% my enemy, but
that's what I'm saying too.
But ultimately,
he's on our side.
Ultimately, like whether you guys like this or not, and fine, give me all the shit. Listen, guys, we are literally the #1 Bitcoin only live show on the planet. Okay, so I'm saying it. I'm coming out. I'm coming out, and I'm saying it. All right. The matter of a fact is that the Bitcoin and crypto industry right now, they're tied at the hip. Right.
Facts.
Like, Bitcoin isn't crypto. Like, it's not crypto. It's a totally different asset. It's totally different. Bitcoiners think differently. We have Bitcoin only businesses. We have an entire ecosystem that is literally for Bitcoin and not crypto.
Well, I would maybe go further, fighting crypto.
But exactly. Like, but the market, the people that are not in the trenches consuming Bitcoin content like you guys are right now, their perception is that we are one in the same.
Yeah.
Right. That's the perception. They use Bitcoin and crypto interchangeably. Right. So that's the perception of it. So, and from a regulatory perspective, from a legislation perspective, the fact is that these pieces of legislation are not Bitcoin focused. They're crypto focused, which a lot of that overlaps with Bitcoin. This is why we have to cover these things. And this is why we have to say, listen, Brian, it's better to have Brian Armstrong than having someone that's anti-Bitcoin, anti-crypto altogether. So that's why we say the expression, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So, it is what it is, for better or for worse. But, hopefully when this, I agree with Brian Armstrong, man. Like this bill got hijacked. I can't emphasize that enough. I saw this happening in slow motion. It got hijacked. It went from a bill that was supposed to provide clarity, regulatory clarity for the industry, was supposed to provide protections for users, was meant to protect the right to self custody, and it essentially got co-opted to protect the banking industry and to protect to basically take away some of your privacy as a U.S. citizen. And again, it keeps the title clarity. It reminds me of the act that was passed during the Biden administration. That was like the anti-inflation. I don't remember what the exact name is. And then like the actual bill literally meant that they were just going to print billions of dollars. Which is like the opposite, right? I can't talk about the other.
All right, well, let me jump in here and add some numbers here to kind of further your point here. The main crux of the Coinbase fighting this Clarity Act bill is, of course, the stablecoin yield. And I know I talked about it a couple of days ago, and I didn't have the numbers on the top of my head, but I did look back into it, and if basically Coinbase or the crypto industry get their way with the stablecoin yields, then that is potentially like I think it was $6 trillion that they would lose. It could be billion or trillion. So maybe I don't have the numbers exactly off the top of my head. It's a lot of money.
It is they are in dire straits.
Yeah. So it might be 6 trillion. I think.
And take a look at the rewards, the wording that Brian Armstrong used in that wording. He used the word rewards on purpose because he couldn't use the word interest, right? Because if you use the word interest, it's like that's the smoking gun. So he's using the word rewards, but ultimately it functions the same way, right? If you leave, your quote unquote whatever crypto on Coinbase and they offer you rewards for that, like, what is that if not a form of interest, right? And this is what they're freaking out about. So part of the Genius Act again was to forbid that. But the way that a lot of these crypto exchanges found a way to circumvent that was to offer rewards, right? So we're not going to offer interest, but we're going to offer rewards. And then the banking industry is stepping in and they're saying we can't let that happen because this would be again, a lot of people would pull their money out of the banking system and just operate natively within these new financial apps. I know someone very close to me that literally does not have a bank account and literally uses Cash App, which is, I love Cash App, like what Jack Dorsey's doing with Block and Bitcoin and the products they're building, like the BitKey. It's fantastic. It's great. But this is what the banks are scared of. But at the same time, it's like, does Cash App charge you $10 a month for you to leave your money on Cash App? No, right? So this is what they're concerned about, but they're not playing the fair game. They're not playing, oh, let's compete. They're playing, oh, we're the big banks and we make the laws here. We make the rules, right? Remember in 2008, even though we made mistakes, ultimately it was Main Street that bailed out Wall Street. All right, everybody.
Wait. One more thing to add, and I'm not going to go long, but there was, I don't know if you guys caught the Coinbase 2025 Q4 update, but Brian Armstrong, which is, I think it's about a week or so after that initial post that Nico was talking about where Brian Armstrong was saying, I can't support this bill. A couple of days later, they did come out and say, hey, actually, we'll come back to the table. We'll have this conversation. And Nico and I were both on the show like, the Clarity Act's over. It's done. It's a wrap. But we did get a snippet from Brian Armstrong where now he's bullish on the Clarity Act passing. And he said the same thing that Scott Bessent said. If this passes, it's going to send Bitcoin higher. So who knows what the conversations have been behind the scenes. But there does seem to be a new cohesion over the narratives here.
There does seem to be some momentum. Anyways, guys, this is going to be an incredible show. We have the chairman of HIVE Digital Technologies joining us on the show later today. Bulldog Holmes, aka Frank Holmes. He's going to be joining us at 1:45. Before that, we got jam-packed. We got a whole entire show full of content for you guys today. We're going to be right back just after the break. Today's episode is brought to you by Bitcoin Well Infinite. If you're a serious Bitcoin buyer, you've probably hit the same wall. Most platforms make you give up custody just to play by the rules. Bitcoin Well Infinite fixes that. They're North America's only publicly traded, non-custodial OTC desk listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, which means transparent operations and zero counterparty risk.
You buy Bitcoin, you take immediate control, period. For trades over $50,000, you get a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, competitive spread starting at 1%, and immediate delivery straight to your own wallet. No custody risk, no withdrawal fees, just institutional grade execution with full asset control. If you want to buy Bitcoin the right way, book a free consultation at bitcoinwell.com/OTC or email infinite@bitcoinwell.com.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Stampseed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? Stampseed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of just writing them down on paper. Paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They're also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo, and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on Stampseed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store. All right, everybody. I do want to give a shout out to our partner again, Stampseed. Don't write down your seed words on paper. Stamp them into titanium. Go to stampseed.com today. Use promo code SIMPLY. Again, promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $69,020. Sats per dollar, 1,449. Block height, 936,410. Realized monetary inflation, 0.83%. The grand scheme of things, we're just getting started. Market capitalization of Bitcoin currently sitting pretty at 1.38 trillion. We're just getting the party started, ladies and gentlemen. The market cap of gold is $35 trillion. And
dude, Nico, I'm more depressed. Remember when we were at 2 trillion and now we're at 1.3 trillion?
I'll take it. That's a discount, baby. I'll take it. I mean, $35 trillion market cap for gold, and Bitcoin's only
35x.
No, dude, it's less. It's 1.38. It's not 1.
What? Okay, 33x, whatever.
A lot less.
Math is hard. All right, 30x,
anyway,
whatever.
Bitcoin Bitcoin versus gold market cap 4.61%, and percentage issued there. I could kind of do the math just on the Bitcoin versus gold. It's like roughly 20 something x.
Math's hard.
Percentage issued 95.18%. Almost all the Bitcoin. That's crazy. Anyways, I got a clip for you guys. Do we have it uploaded?
Give me 1 second, but cover the tweet and then it should be done.
All right. Let's check out this tweet by, of course, the one, the only, the Chad Saylor went on Charles Payne, and it said some interesting things.
I'll play it.
Millions of Bitcoin. We do have a crypto-friendly administration, but recently I think maybe it's the banking industry, there have been some setbacks down in Washington, D.C. What's your feelings with respect to policy and maybe some of the pressures on Bitcoin right now emanating from the fact that maybe you've hit a few speed bumps in D.C.?
Well, I mean, the nation bought Alaska, it bought Texas, it bought California, it bought the Louisiana territory. They were all very good investments. We think about Greenland right now. That's on the top of everybody's tongue. What's pretty clear is that you're going to want to be the leader in digital intelligence, that's AI, and you're going to be the leader in digital assets. If the nation doesn't buy most of the Bitcoin network, at the very least, what we want is constructive policy so that United States companies buy and United States investors buy digital assets, and that way the taxpayers and the nation benefits from their efforts.
At last read, MicroStrategies or Strategy rather had over 700,000 Bitcoin, 22.8% yield in fiscal year 2025. Are you still? How profitable has the overall trade been or investment?
The company's 100 times bigger than it was 5 years ago, Charles. It's been an extraordinary achievement. The stock's up by a factor of 10. We've outperformed every Mag 7 company except for NVIDIA. So it's extremely profitable. I think the company's 3x the performance of the S&P index over that time frame. So we're very pleased with the Bitcoin strategy.
Let's shift to the.
So, I mean, a little bit more positive. Was
it though? I mean, you do your take and I'll do my take. I might be a little more cynical on it.
It's so interesting when they have Charles Payne.
He's the GOAT.
Doing the interview versus
he's not attacking him
like the other reporters, which full on massacre essentially. So a little bit more empathetic, but he did ask something very similar in terms of the regulatory environment of the US's involvement in Bitcoin. You guys know how I feel about that. We talked about that a couple of a couple episodes ago. But I want to get your take. What did you see that I didn't see, Opti?
Well, obviously, I think your initial gut reaction, like Saylor does seem a little happier. Maybe he's like the pressure's off.
It's the Miami sunshine.
Yeah,
bro.
maybe. He did have a tan.
He's getting that vitamin D, and he's just getting happier.
Well, maybe it was the freezing temperature had all of us on edge last week. No, but what I kind of heard, is it. And I look, again, I'm mind reading, I'm speculating here, but it almost felt like he backtracked on the idea of the U.S. government actually buying Bitcoin. He's like, the U.S. needs to buy Bitcoin basically for like national security reasons, which we've been hearing for a long time. But he did kind of temper that with like, if that doesn't happen, they have to at least pass good Bitcoin regulation so that American Bitcoin companies can buy Bitcoin. So look, I mean, maybe we're all just being super bearish about the U.S. actually buying Bitcoin at this point, but he has been very adamant about like the U.S. is going to buy a bunch of Bitcoin, and now he's like, look, at least pass some good regulations.
Hey, bro, we showed you guys that picture of Ivanka,
that's true. That's
Ivanka's
true.
Instagram, and Saylor,
maybe they told him to back off on the narrative.
Saylor in the background, like caught in 4K, right? That tweet might have been bad on my end.
yeah, you blew its cover, bro. That's probably why he's pulling back.
That tweet might have not been the most intelligent thing. Hey, it was good reporting. It blew the fuck up.
Hey, it was good reporting. It's some good yellow journalism.
What do you mean yellow journalism, bro? That's some news.
I'm just trolling.
It's crazy that Bitcoin has paparazzi now, bro. It's like, oh my god, bro, listen, Saylor's with Ivanka. Oh my god. Sailors with Ivanka.
Bunch of nerds.
Sailors with the Trump family. Sailors with the Trump family. That means my bags are gonna be pumped.
Yo,
bro.
just pump my bag, Saylor. Trump.
Sailors with the Trump family.
Trump, if you can hear me, can you pump my bags already, man?
Oh man. All right, everybody, it's going to be a great show. We're going to be talking about Elon Musk. And again, in about 20 minutes or so, the chairman of HIVE Digital Technologies, Frank Holmes, Bulldog Holmes, is going to be joining us on the show. It's going to be great. But before we get to that, I found out the reason as to why Elon Musk has not been talking about Bitcoin. Remember, a couple years ago, Elon was like, listen, if you go to Tesla now accepts Bitcoin. So you can buy your car using Bitcoin. Then he backtracked. He said, we can't do that anymore unless we know that more than 50% of Bitcoin mining is being powered by renewable energies. More than 50% is coming from renewable energies at this point. But Elon never reintroduced Bitcoin. Also, there's been so many pictures of Elon with members of the Trump administration. He was there when President Trump signed all these bills that were pro Bitcoin. I mean, all these executive orders that were pro Bitcoin. There was Howard Lutnick in the back. There was Elon in the back, and Elon was like going like this, like doing his thing. So he was present in the room when the strategic Bitcoin reserve executive order was signed. He was there. He was in the photo shoot when that was signed, right? And of course, you had Howard Lutnick there. And Howard Lutnick was very vocal about it. The AI crypto czar, David Sachs was there. But Elon remained quiet. And guys, you have to understand something about Elon. SpaceX owns, I think it's like 10,000 Bitcoin. Tesla is one of the Mag 7 that owns, I think it's like 10,000 Bitcoin or something. We have to check out bitcointreasuries.net.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. I haven't refreshed myself.
But they own Bitcoin. And I'm like, why isn't Elon going out? Remember, during the 2021 bull market, this dude was going out and talking about Doge left and right. And it perplexed me. I'm like, why isn't he talking about Bitcoin? Like, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. So how much does Tesla own?
11.5
11,500 Bitcoin.
I don't know where SpaceX is on here.
It's a private company. It's
okay.
So it's a lot of Bitcoin. So why isn't Elon talking about Bitcoin? I think I just might have found out why. We're going to be right back in just a bit. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledin.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy, HIVE has quadrupled its global Bitcoin mining footprint and channels that same scale into high performance compute, where their AI cloud is now ranked #1 in the world for network performance. At HIVE, you've got dual engines, Bitcoin and AI humming, roaring, accelerating in unison. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable digital infrastructure. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech
or at HIVEdigitaltech.com.
All right, everybody. I do want to give a shout out to the BitKey guys. Go to bitkey.world today. If you use promo code simply99, you get 33% off your BitKey. So it's originally $150. You can get it for $100 or $99 to be specific. And we're going to be giving a BitKey today. Today is the end of the contest, the BitKey giveaway contest. So again, if you want to sign up, go to Twitter right now. Go to the pinned tweet on the Simply Bitcoin account, and you'll see how to enter. And you have a chance to win a BitKey hardware wallet on the house. Take a look at that. Free things. Free things are good. Anyways, let's get to today's story before Frank. I took myself off air by accident. Sorry about that. Anyways, let's talk about the one, the only, Mr. Elon Musk, the world's almost trillionaire. He's $150 billion away from being a trillionaire.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is absolutely. Just to give you guys a perspective, the total GDP of El Salvador is $32 billion. This man is worth $850 billion. Anyways, tech billionaire Elon Musk issues serious dollar warning, sparking wild Bitcoin regulation after price crash. I'm going to connect the dots for you guys. So the reason I want to talk about this in the first place is Elon had, I think it was like a presentation on X, essentially, not too long ago. And he was talking about X money. And that's when it clicked to me. That's when it all made sense. So I'm going to play you guys the clip of Mr. Elon talking about this, and then Opti and I will chat about it.
For X Money, we actually had X Money live in closed beta within the company, and we expect in the next month or two to go to a limited external beta, and then to go worldwide to all X users. And this is really intended to be the place where all the money is, the central source of all monetary transactions. So it's really going to be a game changer.
There you go. You want to know why Elon isn't talking about Bitcoin? There you go. He wants the X app to be the everything app, which he's said many, many times. And part of being the everything app where you consume content, you get your news, you make payments, is essentially a way to pay people right now over messaging. It's encrypted. You can message people. You can call people on X. I don't know if you guys knew that. So he's really designing it to be the everything app. And my theory, I finally figured out, it finally clicked for me as to why he hasn't been talking about Bitcoin. Jack Dorsey, on the other hand, he's been designing his whole company. Block is essentially building towards a world where Bitcoin is going to be the money. Elon is not building towards that world. He wants X to be, to use his words, the central entity where all payments are made. Now, the thing is, this has been tried before, right? This has been tried with PayPal, which again, Elon was involved with. This was which again was originally called X. This was been tried by Libra, right? Which was like the Facebook version of this. And it all failed. And the reason it all failed was because of the centralization of these platforms. Because of the centralization of these platforms, essentially, they folded to government pressure. Ultimately, governments don't want a platform like X, which has already taken a free speech stance, to have that much power and influence over payments. That's what it comes down to. Now, is he going to take a different approach than Libra, where Libra tried to create their own currency out of nothing? Is he just going to be the rails, right? Is he just going to facilitate payments between US dollars and euros and all of that stuff? Perhaps, but I'll tell you what, there's going to be limits. There's going to be censorship. And I'll tell you guys something. I'm sure not going to keep a balance of money on my X account, right? Like, think about that. What if you have a political thought, right? like a political opinion, and the place where you have your political opinions is the same place that you're sending and receiving money, and it's a centralized entity and it's a centralized company, right? That already wants to be shut down by the EU. I mean, like, you hear about these Spanish politicians and what they're saying about X and how much they want to shut it down, right? Like, I just don't think the two mix. Like, I don't think the two mix. I don't think it will work because of its of its centralization. The reason that Bitcoin was such an innovation in the first place is because it's decentralized peer-to-peer cash, money, Bitcoin, whatever you want to call it. That is the innovation of Bitcoin. Nobody can control it. Nobody can shut it down. Therefore, if you're an entrepreneur building on top of Bitcoin, you can't shut down the base layer, right? And I told you guys this the other day during the Canadian truckers protest, when a lot of accounts were frozen because of political opinions, when they tried to go after the the collaborative custody provider Nunchuck was like, listen, we can't give you the keys. We can't give you access to these people's accounts, even if we wanted to, because we don't have the keys, right? That's why building on Bitcoin is going to work. If not, I don't think governments are ever going to allow it. And it reminds me of the Hayek quote. I think the Hayek quote really reminds me of this situation. Is like, you're never going to get money out of the hands of government if you don't find a sly roundabout way. Bitcoin is that sly roundabout way. And that sly roundabout way is pure peer-to-peer decentralization. It's decentralization. The decentralization is what makes Bitcoin unique. It's the differentiating factor. No other cryptos have the decentralization that Bitcoin has. It doesn't even come close, right? So this is my thesis. This is my theory as to why Elon has not been talking about Bitcoin, because he wants X to be the payment platform. He wants X to be the payment platform. And I think as much of a fan as I am of Elon and the products that he makes, Teslas are great. SpaceX, what he's doing is amazing. Since he's taken over X, like the free speech stuff has been fantastic. I just don't think having a social media platform where people are talking and speaking freely and making opinions about things, having that tied to a bank account, having that tied to a payment platform, I just don't think that's a good idea. Opti?
Yeah, I might go a little harder. I mean, it sounds like he's building, the social credit score for the internet here. That's kind of my view of this, though. The dichotomy between Jack Dorsey, what he's building, and what Elon Musk is building, I think it's becoming like very prevalent and very blatant for everyone. Like Jack Dorsey, say what you want about him when he was in control of Twitter, but now he's all in on Bitcoin. And now we see what Elon Musk is building. And of course, he's building this X money. And let's not forget, Elon Musk came from the PayPal kind of, the PayPal group. And then also he has said very publicly that he wants to build the WeChat of the West. That's what they're doing here with the X money. And when I hear that I want to centralize all the payments, maybe it's just the Bitcoiner in me. When I hear the C word, I'm just like, oh man, this is going to be a giant disaster. Like Nika said, we saw what they did with Facebook, or we saw what Facebook tried to do. And then David Marcus had to completely pivot, go on Lightning, because they realized it was extremely hard to do.
He's crushing it.
Yeah, Lightspark. Yeah, exactly.
Lightspark solved, and I had the honor of being able to interview him in Lugano at Plan B. And I asked him this question, and it blew my mind. I was like, I said, dude, because that's what I do. I was like, dude, like, you solved the custodial problem, because one of the issues with Lightning was that it was custodial, right? So like, Wallet of Satoshi is fantastic, but it's custodial Lightning. Lightspark solved that. So now you have, if you download Wallet of Satoshi, which is now available in the US, it's non-custodial Lightning. That's awesome, right? And the reason that David Marcus pivoted, he went from PayPal to trying to build out Libra at Meta, and he realized, oh my God, like, I'm not going to be able to build these things that I want to build. I'm not going to be able to make these innovations unless it's on a decentralized base layer, right? And that is Bitcoin, right? So that's why people are building on Bitcoin. Jack Dorsey sees the light. David Marcus saw the light.
Will Elon see the light?
I think
I
Elon
don't
is.
think
I
so.
think Elon's really, really hell bent on. Remember, this X app, by the way, this X.com, that was the original name of PayPal.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That was the original name of PayPal. He hasn't let that go, right? And I commend him. He's a heck of an entrepreneur, but he hasn't let that go. So he's marching full force towards, releasing this X money, and that's my theory as to why that's my theory as to why he hasn't talked about Bitcoin. I don't know if you disagree with that.
No,
Abdi,
I agree with that.
I couldn't
100%.
figure it out, but that I put two and two together when I saw that presentation. I'm like, oh, obviously this makes sense. Like, now I get it. I understand, right?
Yeah, and did you see the Grok post that everyone was circulating and saying like, oh, X money is going to be peer to peer and maybe use something like Bitcoin? Everyone's like, oh, X money is going to use Bitcoin, and me and you're like, nah, dude, that's not what's going to happen. That's not how it's going to work out. Let's not fall into that kind of idea that, oh, maybe they'll use Bitcoin. Maybe he will be forced to eventually because it's not going to work how he wants it to.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Anyways, we got the one, the only Bulldog Holmes, Frank Holmes, executive chairman of HIVE Digital Technologies. He's joining us on the show today. Frank, thank you so much. How you doing?
Outstanding that I'm talking to you guys.
We got Frank in the house. Frank, a huge announcement, amazing announcement coming out of HIVE this morning. A press release that I read mentioned that you guys signed a $30 million customer agreement over the next 2 years. How big of a milestone is that for Buzz?
It's part of the journey that the Buzz is going to 140 million. So to put in context, a year ago, it was about $1 million a month of revenue. And now Craig Tavares has been able to take that up to 2 million, 3 million. This new deal takes us from 1 to 3 million in a year in revenue. Our goal is to get it up to $10 million by this time next year, every month in revenue. And it's nice high margin business. We're the biggest player in Canada. And then we think there's huge opportunities also for HPC in Paraguay. We've just come out with a brand new mandate to offer long-term contracts, inexpensive energy for 15 years. So it makes it very competitive, and we feel there's lots of runway there.
That's fantastic news. And Frank, I'll also say as well that seeing essentially the kind of the mining industry being perfectly positioned to take advantage of this AI wave, and then HIVE being at the forefront of that, being able to see it, being able to experiencing it, seeing these sites, seeing what you guys have been able to accomplish, has been incredible. It has been incredible to witness. I mean, what does this entail for just the overall energy demand that is going to be needed over the next 10 years? Where does Bitcoin fit into all of this? Where does AI fit into all of this? And how is HIVE positioning itself?
Well, that's a long essay to answer, but I think what's really for HIVE's positioning is that we're not chasing these AI fairy tales of big contracts, big construction, long-term with hyperscalers, and you still have to build. And people don't realize that tier 3 data centers cost a lot more. It's like driving a Jeep. Now all of a sudden you're in a Ferrari, you're in a Lambo, Bugattis. You have to think of that level of complexity that when you're building tier 3. We're just doing it in a very conservative way. We haven't funded with these $500 million convertible notes, etc. We've not done any of that with our balance sheet. We're very, I would say, ultra conservative in managing that, and we're still able to deliver the lowest SG&A of all the Bitcoin ecosystem. When you look at how much Bitcoin we produce and now AI revenue, when I look at the other companies, they've not all done their announcements this quarter, but I don't think anyone's going to be beating this run rate. But they have lots of construction, maybe 2-3 years out. with all this big construction risk, we're very cognizant. Nico, it's very hard to get, they call chillers. You have to pay in advance. It could wait 9 months to 2 years. Transformers, all this equipment, in addition to NVIDIA chips, everyone wants to talk about, but the electrical infrastructure necessary for those NVIDIA chips, there's a huge backlog. We get calls on a regular basis that come March, like at our data center in Toronto, can you be ready March 1st? We'll give you a multi-million-dollar contract for 5 years. We just need it. We just need it. So now we go back and look at this infrastructure build, that there's lots of action, but getting all the equipment, there's been more delays and disappointments, which I think will take place. And we're just going to go methodically, conservatively in our growth of the dual engine model.
The dual engine, the Navy SEALs of the Bitcoin mining industry, as I like to call you guys. Frank, where's the bottleneck? I want to kind of get an understanding, right? Because you're describing a bottleneck. Where's the bottleneck happening? Is it the energy infrastructure? Is it the actual manufacturing of these GPUs, of these AI chips? Like what's?
No, I don't think it's the chips, Nico. I think that what we're wrestling with is that when you want to go build a substation, so you have this big voltage of electricity, and you cannot plug your hairdryer into that; it'll explode. So you have to have these called step downs. And you saw when you were in Paraguay, those substations are big. And so they're taking that electricity down, and then it goes to another step down for transformers. And then you get to plug it in, the electricity comes into your a tier 3 data center or tier 1 data center. But these step downs, they use a lot of copper. They use aluminum. The manufacture of that is a long lead time. So what you're witnessing today is get the electricity, get the land, and the permitting to go and build. And those permits by different states. So we're seeing a bit of a backlash in Pennsylvania, I believe, and the NGOs are running around with worried about three-eyed frogs and things like that. I'm being facetious, but there was such a big NGO anti-nuclear. Well, ever since AWS went and did a nuclear deal, it's all gone quiet. So this group of NGOs have to go find something out there, and now it's data centers. That's where the attack is. So companies like Google, et cetera, have to be very sensitive of the neighborhoods where they're building. And so it's not easy. You just can't run and build and plug them in. You have commodities, commodity prices, copper make an all-time high. Well, there's many reasons for that. One of them is the big data center build out, because you have a lot of copper going into that infrastructure. And then there's human beings that go and manufacture. I was talking to some of the guys from the Bitcoin ecosystem that are manufacturing transformers now in Houston, because they don't want it coming from China. Well, that still takes time. So I got the electricity, I got the land, but all these heavy equipment components before the NVIDIA chips get put in, that's where the delays are taking place.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's building out the infrastructure itself. And that's where the bottleneck is. Frank, I want to pivot the conversation a little bit to, and for anyone who doesn't know, ladies and gentlemen, HIVE represents a big portion of the overall global Bitcoin hash rate. And we have the executive chairman joining us on today's show. Frank, I want to ask you, what's going on with Bitcoin? Gold had this historic performance in 2025. I know you come from the gold industry. Silver had a great year. Bitcoin, I would say it did okay. It did reach an all-time high. What are you seeing in 2026 that perhaps other people are not seeing?
Well, what I didn't see was a significance and the magnitude of 1010. Aiden right now, our CEO, he's at the Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong. And that was a lot of conversation of the ramifications. So I started doing research. He and I started talking about it and sending me what the interviews were saying. But Nico, it's really quite incredible. If you look at 22, when we had Celsius implode, for us, then Ethereum went to proof of stake from proof of work. And then we had FTX. In a 6-month period, we had to weather all those stories. Well, so did the whole crypto ecosystem have to really weather FTX blow up. The magnitude of the Binance algos allegedly hitting every bid, that they blew out $19 billion. They took money from, this is what's alleged out there, from accounts that were not part of this algo to take, and they were sold out. Binance only at the end of January comes out and says, I think they $300 million they gave money back. But what happened to the other, and who are the guys that made money? So the retail component there lost their money. They got tapped out. And I've seen this happen back in the early 80s in the futures market, where they would be able to determine on the Chicago board that there's a lot of people having stop losses at this level, and the market makers will then turn around and knock it down, and then they'd all get hit, get blown out, and then they take the prices back up. And that it's evolved that doesn't happen. It happened in the gold market. I know that JP Morgan's had traders that got found guilty in court. They've had to pay tens of millions of dollars in fines, where they would call spoof the market. They would look when the market's quiet and say, well, we've got a gazillion ounces of gold to sell. And they really haven't sold it, but then the market bids all dried up and prices fell. They quite often did that when the Chinese were going through their Chinese New Year, or it was in the first week of October when they celebrate Communist Year. So we know this from the gold world, and we know this from the commodities trading with copper, but it doesn't happen in that evolution today. But it is happening when you have an exchange like Binance that also has accounts. So you got to think of the New York Stock Exchange also having institutional retail trading right beside it. So where's that transparency? Well, front running is easy to do. So they see, oh, it's an algo, and they go and blame the Trump for going anti-China. The question begs itself, why didn't it happen April the 2nd last year? Why does it just happen at this time? $19 billion is 10 times the size, 10 times of FTX, where Sam Bankman fried the industry. So it's a big deal, and it breaks trust. And the other part is that the ETF world of retail investors and institutional investors in America had piled in almost $200 billion into the ETF space. And just after Bitcoin runs to $126,000, et cetera, this happens. And then some supposedly one hedge fund made of 1.2 billion. Well, what did they know? It just makes you so suspicious. Well, when you have too much suspicion like that, you have lack of trust and the integrity of the system. So I think that this whole thing and what Binance did and how they did the mea culpa, they go and blame it's on Trump. It's just not, I don't believe that, but it did hurt the overall industry, and it creates this thing called a contagion. It's a COVID type of virus starts spreading through, where trust, the element of trust of the Bitcoin ecosystem, was severely damaged by what they call was a bad algo. And I'd like to know, did they change the algo? Like what is it's the infrastructure of what was taking place. I think that something, if this happened in America in an exchange and a brokerage firm that's regulated, that fat figure, there would be a big investigation to basically foster trust within the ecosystem of capital markets. That's not happened yet with Binance and exactly what's taken place. So we know $19 billion gets spacked out. Someone allegedly makes $1.2 billion. Someone's made whole a bunch of hedge funds for $300 million. All those nuances create doubt, and they knock this thing down. And then we have, in the month of January, the Japanese carry trade. as Japanese rates rise, then hedge funds that borrow cheap money from Japan and go into more speculative investments start unwinding that trade. It's happened many times in the capital markets, is trying to understand how long does it last. Usually these bear cycles, what we just saw, are 4 months. So if it happened October the 10th, this week was February the 10th. So maybe the markets are going to get some love. They're going to be Valentine's Day weekend. We got President's Day weekend coming up, long weekend. And looking at the math of markets, forgetting all these nuances and who did what wrong, forget all of that. Just look at the volatility. We're down 2 standard deviations. Well, what does that mean when we look at Bitcoin down 2 standard deviations? Mathematically, that means we have a high probability of a 17 to a 35% rally. What is that? And how often has that happened in the past 5 years? Twice. It happened when China went and attacked the Bitcoin ecosystem by miners and traders, etc. And it happened when FTX blew up. So now we're 4 months later. I think that the worst is in the capital markets is behind us. And I remain bullish from that context.
That breakdown was fantastic. And the Binance aspect of it, Frank, to me is the most fascinating, because how much, Frank, the Clarity Act is a hot button issue today, right? Scott Bessent was on CNBC this morning talking about it, advocating for it. How much do you think how important is the Clarity Act for it to be passed? Because if that piece of legislation passes, you would think that Binance wouldn't be able to do what they did. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, there's negligence or gross negligence in their operations. That's clearly, and they don't care. He's worth 80 billion, the CEO, and they trade trillions of dollars. So that's what you're wrestling with. But I would believe that if it was in a domicile here, there'd be a big investigation. That's what I think. But it's an unregulated world there, and so you have to be very nimble about it. I think that what's happening that only adds to the down 2 standard deviations is this drama over the stable coin. So at first, when I was here the October 10th, I've become, okay, put on your conspiracy hat, because for me, it's China. And China, we know in San Antonio, Texas, where the NSA has a big operation, that the MSS, which is the KGB of Russia, has been attacking in cybersecurity attacks on the power systems in America, the telecom system. And so maybe they went to attack that chip, or that code they had, for the bot, the algo bot that made a big error. Maybe they hacked that to create that, because China is at war with the US dollar. And I know this so well from my world of gold. It's a war. And they have weaponized the BRICS nations from a handful of 5 countries to now over 12 to not do any commodity trading. That is, if they buy commodity China from Chile or Peru, they have to be in Chinese yuan. And so this war continues with those countries. So now those central banks that are part of the BRICS group, they become fearful, and they've been selling down the US dollar and owning gold. And that's part of the big rally last year, was more and more central banks do not want to get in between their foreign currency reserves between China and the US. So China is basically weaponizing the BRICS. And then they do something else. Their One Belt, One Road for the Marco Polo was about also 12 countries of the Silk Road trade. Well, that's grown to 150 countries, not 12 as originally planned. And they've now lent money to 75% of the countries that represent the United Nations. So there's moral suasion for those central banks that are there to be in US dollars, and it's showing up in buying of gold. And so that this idea of hurting the US dollar, and along comes Tether stablecoin, and they show that all emerging markets love the US dollar, and they become very, very wealthy because they collect the interest on that stablecoin, and billions of dollars go into the US dollar. And this administration recognizes the significance of stable coins, and there's a push to pay a coupon on that. They're calling it rewards, but really it's like a money market fund. And if you go back in the mutual fund history, I hope I'm not too much, Nico, on this, but if
No,
you go,
I'm loving this, Frank. Keep going. Keep going.
if you go back and Steve Jobs' great line about looking in the back, you can't predict the future. So what you do is you go back and you see and you connect the dots. So if you look at the mutual fund industry, it really didn't take off until interest rates went to 20%. The banks couldn't pay those high yields, and money market fund, mutual fund companies could. So all of a sudden, billions of dollars go into mutual funds, and it becomes 30% of all mutual funds. And then those money market funds are paying high yields, and the S&Ls are able to get bailed out, and they can pay higher yields. And so money leaves the banks to go to S&Ls, and that becomes a crisis. But not with mutual funds. It doesn't become that crisis, but they go into mutual funds, and then those investors start buying stocks and technology ETF, and before ETFs. Now we have the evolution of mutual funds going into ETFs. And that's been now the fact last year that there's more ETFs than there are stocks. So that's a big tipping points that happen in capital markets. So it's recognizing the stable coin is very important to this administration. And Coinbase and other people are pushing that they can have rewards for that stable coin. That is, they will look like a money market fund paying you interest, but they'll be called rewards.
Yeah, and from my understanding,
banks don't want it.
yes, and my understanding. So we actually talked about this in the beginning of the show, Frank. My understanding is that the biggest hurdle that the Clarity Act has right now is the fact that the banks don't want Coinbase to offer those rewards for customers because banks are freaking out. That they see it as competition.
They're not just doing that. This is a delay process. This is a process to get ahead of the curve. So Coinbase and Circle, all these other entities are much further along in fintech and in the digital fintech and digital money. And so they're trying to stifle that momentum they have so they can get their stable coins out and so that they can get traction with that ecosystem. And so we saw this, I wrote about this with Facebook. Facebook was like anti-Bitcoin on the first big run, anti-everything. Well, you know why? Because they were coming with their own stable coin. And that upset the banks, and they immediately got the regulators, everyone to attack Facebook. Facebook ended up changing their name to Meta. Facebook turned around but their idea was called the Libra coin. And it was brilliant because it would be transformative for the whole world because they have billions of followers on Facebook, and all of a sudden they would have the Libra digital coin, and the government did not want that, and the banks clearly didn't want that. So they ended up selling their assets, and it went through this process, and it comes out they were anti. We have then J.P. Morgan, and they're anti-Bitcoin, they're anti the crypto ecosystem. Well, we find out there was in a lawsuit that one of the biggest miners of Ethereum was J.P. Morgan, and they were using AWS. So what they're doing, they're trying to get this big enough to make Ethereum to pivot into staking so that they would be the biggest player in the sandbox for Ethereum staking coins. So this is what we're witnessing, but you know who throws a punch? China. China comes out with their one stable coin, and it will pay interest. And that's, once again, this is the fight. The global war is on. It's not nuclear missiles coming back and forth and drones hitting, and pray to God it doesn't happen. But there is this financial war. And what there is behind that is as Xi Jinping became dictator for life in 2018, he comes into power in 2012. He's got total control. So he has no institutions to hold him accountable. He will just do his purges like he did a few weeks ago, anyone that disagrees with him. So he is at this war, and what they've done in that sort of growth is they've increased their military navy that is now has more warships than America. There's all this espionage of stealing from Raytheon and Grumman and Boeing, their technology for Air Force weaponry. And so we're on this battle, and the Trump administration is really elevating this as saying, look at Europe, you have to cover your say, because if you don't cover your at least 2%, we're not going to cover you. Well, immediately they go to 2%, and now he's pushed 5%. So we are seeing this huge military spending, and it's about protection. And countries like Poland, whose stock market was up like 60% last year, they know darn well that they have to have a huge wall to stop all the illegals coming across from Belarus. And they know that Russia was weaponizing human beings. They were taking people from the Middle East to basically go in as illegal immigrants into Finland, into Poland and Hungary. So these countries, it doesn't meet the mainstream. So they're now becoming a protectionist. And what the administration did at the World Economic Forum a couple of weeks ago, they redefined what is taking place. So like 95, we create the World Trade Organization. Like 2003, I think, China is brought into this world trade. It's globalization. It's a brilliant idea because it did work at the beginning, where if trade is first, then it creates jobs and takes people out of poverty. And it did that until China's Xi Jinping becomes dictator for life. And so we've seen this sort of pivot, and now it's becoming, well, globalization is going to take a backseat. It's going to be sovereign national security. That is first and foremost. So 5% of GDP of NATO countries have to spend. They're all looking for also data centers. We know this, that they need data centers for high performance computing, because all the new weaponry is NVIDIA chips, and they need high performance chips. So that is the new wave. It's not just open chat that everyone talks about is the big demand. No, it's also military for national security. So what the US government really showed at the World Economic Forum is that globalization, global trade is now taking a backseat to national security. And China is only helped under Xi Jinping to create this drama by attacking the US dollar. And so it's just what it is. So how do you manipulate these capital markets and where they're going? I think that the Bitcoin, there's a space, there's a guy named James Turk. You got to get him on your show about gold. But he always had this idea that the value of gold is the total FX and M2 of the world. And if you did that, then gold should be like $11,000. Because there's 8 billion ounces of gold known above surface around the world. So simple math, add up the numbers, divide one or the other. Well, when you do Bitcoin, we're talking 5 million.
No way. But wait, hold on, Frank. I want to unpack all of this. First of all, you just let me connect the dots as to why the Trump administration keeps saying this over and over again. Listen, if we don't get ahead of the curve on the crypto stuff and the AI stuff, China or Russia will. So you just connected the dots for me on that end. But I want to get back to the gold.
But talk about the gold, it's really interesting. If James Turk, I love this guy. He uses simply monetary aggregates that gold would be overvalued if it was above 11,000. And so you can turn around and say, okay, just in the ecosystem of America, America still has the most gold backing its currency, and China knows to become a global power as a currency, they have to have more gold, so they're continuing to buy the gold. What happens if America goes mark to market? Because their gold's carried on the books at $35 an ounce, not 5,000. What does that do to the money printing? So I think, that during this Trump era, we're probably going to get this push. I'm speculating now. This is just wild speculating for an old guy looking back and trying to connect the dots, that if you did go mark to market with your gold, because China's mark to market, these other central banks are basically, they're not buying gold at 5,000 and marking it down to 35. They're going mark to market. So if we mark the market, what would that mean? It would make our debt to equity really attractive compared to these other countries. And I will tell you that if Canada all of a sudden starts buying gold, they have big gold players at one time. They sold it all because of modern monetary theory and the ego that central bankers could outsmart gold with earning interest on foreign currencies. Well, that hasn't proven out well, especially when you get a leader like Justin Trudeau, who really hurt the country. The new guy, Carney's a really smart guy. He was Goldman Sachs. He was chairman of one of the largest infrastructure companies. The savviest player is called Brookfield. Brookfield owns 1 square kilometer downtown Dubai, where it's just under common law, not Sharia law in the United Emirates. It's really interesting. This is a smart guy that was also the head of the Central Bank of Canada and the only Canadian to become the head of the Central Bank of England. So he understands the capital markets. And what happens if Canada all of a sudden starts saying, we are going to buy all this gold that is mined in Canada for our own central bank? Well, that would create a re-rating of the Canadian dollar immediately, because the trust factor around the world of paper currencies has really gone down. The concept of stable money, Bitcoin, gold, alternative assets, they're growing. And these are sort of the big changes that are taking place.
Frank, I love having you on the show. So much signals being dropped. People are loving it as well. Thousands of people watching live across YouTube, Rumble, and X. Guys, you're listening to Frank Holmes, executive chairman of HIVE Digital Technologies.
Gold hat. So you understand that it's a very 5,000-year-old concept of owning gold, because it's so difficult to mine. The one thing common with Bitcoin is that it's electricity. You need to have energy and refining to make that ounce of gold. You need to have the same, you need energy to mine that Bitcoin. So really, I love when I hear Jensen talk and Elon Musk, that it's a bundle of electricity. The value of a Bitcoin is really the value of being able to create this movement around, and it's a bundle of electricity. And if you said, okay, it is a real wealth currency, then you could talk that it's worth millions. It'll take a lot more time than people think in the adoption. I think the U.S. government has to worry more about China that on the currency battle. But I never underestimate when America gets everyone involved in solving a problem. It's an incredible nation that pulls together. So I think that that's what we have to deal with. I just wish that President Trump would stop making attacks on Canadians the way it's being done. They'd never become the 51st state. If he did, the Republican Party would never become the Republican Party. It'd become the Democrat Party forever. I'm sharing this with you because what we're seeing in Canada, and being Canadian American, and I just spent last week at Harvard. I spent 60 hours, case studies, late at night, going this stuff, and a lot was AI, and a lot of Canadians were there. So there was 180 CEOs from 80 countries around the world. Many self-made billionaires that built up a business outside of America, some inside. So you have to really respect them. And you have the chairman of Air Canada sitting beside me, and you have the chairman of other companies. So I am so humbled to be around these really smart people, and they give you what's taking place. Well, the Canadians are so upset about attacking. You can attack Justin Trudeau and everyone would cheer. You attack a Canadian and it's gloves off and it's a hockey fight. So what have they done? They canceled 3 million flights to America, to Florida, to South Carolina, to Texas, all the snowbirds. They're going to Latin America. They do not want for any penny to be in this country, and that's not good. That's not good karma. Canadians will not buy. The largest buyer of liquor in the world is the LCBO in Ontario. It's the biggest. No American wines, none. Can't get them in the restaurants. No bourbons, nothing from America.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense.
They're voting with their wallet. They're making a decision. And what blew me away was it's impacting locally in San Antonio, guys that own the 3-star hotels. I own the Hampton Inns over here. I have the Holiday Inn over here. Their rates are down really low. The only place that the rates that they can get that are profitable is Abilene, Texas, where the biggest Stargate AI boom from Bitcoin miners to tier 3, $500 billion spend. Those hotels, they're very profitable, but they're telling me about the tourism. So they used to get this tremendous traffic coming south, which it's not on Bloomberg yet. It's not on, and same thing with, I want to share with you on 1010. Why didn't this make the front page of the Wall Street Journal? It really shocked me. It didn't make Barron's. So it's going to make it on your program. And so what we're seeing is that we need allies. America just can't. I understand sovereignty. I understand the protection and security, but we still need allies. And there's favorite nation status is really important, especially when they have common law and they speak the same language. It can be Spanish and English in America, and it can be French and English, but the common element is English.
Yeah,
and the common element of rule of law is common law. We have
cultures.
To think this way.
Cultures, Frank. The cultures are very, very similar. Like I go to Canada at least twice a year to Alberta, and again, the cultures between and I live in the very, very tip of the United States in South Florida. But again, the cultures are very similar. It's the similar language. You can understand each other, similar cultures, similar infrastructures, very similar. You don't feel like you're in Latin America if you're in Canada. It's very similar type of infrastructure, vibes, culture.
Absolutely. And you know what they export besides crazy guys like me? They export comedians. You know how many comedians in Hollywood, that were Canadians, and Saturday Night Live, they have the same program, live theater for stand-up comics in downtown Toronto and Chicago. I mean, but at any rate, I'm venting. I don't want to.
No, Frank. No, but Frank, you're onto something, because, and I've noticed this about the Bitcoin industry in particular. The ratio, meaning the amount of Bitcoin entrepreneurs that are Canadian, right, based on the population of the country, is extremely high. Like if you look at a lot of these companies, in the Bitcoin industry, a lot of these, hardware wallet manufacturers, a lot of these exchanges, a lot of these Bitcoin miners, they're Canadian. Right. And the ratio versus American, entrepreneurs, American companies, it's very high if you compare the populations of the two countries. So I've noticed.
And HIVE being the first crypto mining company, it went public in Canada.
Yep.
And Novacratz's company, it followed right behind us. Hut 8 came right behind us. I found out that it was one of these mining disrupt events, and this is about 4 years ago. And they said that they really learned about using flare gas. They went to Alberta, and they came back to Texas, and they scaled it bigger. Because there was more flare gas. But they went up and saw these small operators in Alberta that were using flare gas to mine Bitcoin and be very profitable. And I got a chuckle out of hearing that. Besides Canadians.
Shout out the Upstream Data guys. They're also based in Alberta, and they use the flared gas to turn that into Bitcoin. Anyways, Frank Holmes, blow my mind every time you come on the show. It's been an honor. You dropped so much signal for the chat. People were loving it. People asked some questions specifically about where they can see some videos on Bitcoin mining. Well, guys, go follow the @HIVE Digital Technologies X account. There's a pinned tweet. You can see an amazing video about HIVE's Bitcoin mining operations.
Especially
and also
Paraguay. You guys did a phenomenal job.
Thanks, Frank. And you could see it. You guys could see what Frank is talking about, because once you see it, you're like, oh my God, like this is a big deal. And then I want to end the show with this, Frank. We got a question on Rumble, and it really stuck out to me. And this is the last question from C-Suite. And he asked the question, why HIVE?
Why HIVE? Well, there's a whole litany of reasons why HIVE. I would think it's just that we're the discipline on capital. We have consistently the highest returns on invested capital. We have the lowest SG&A to mine a Bitcoin. We are fleet of foot. We're the first to do AI. When you look at we're a very innovative company. We function think of this, we function over 9 time zones, 5 languages, 3 continents, and we have the lowest SG&A. And we have always in the top 1, 2, or 3 most efficient miners. So you think of that, that was what makes HIVE special. And so HIVE, I think, has this incredible future, and we're looking for opportunities in America where we can get the electricity in the land, and we'll land something that's very attractive, like we've been able to build it in Paraguay.
And they also make, Opti, could you change to your shot, please? And they also make the best hats ever. Frank, thank you so much for joining us on Simply Bitcoin Live today. Always a pleasure.
Stay positive.
Stay bullish, stay positive. Always a pleasure. So much signal, so much sauce from Bulldog Holmes, aka Frank Holmes, Executive Chairman of HIVE Digital Technologies. Frank, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, that was the Friday show. If you guys enjoyed the show, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing. Go check out HIVE. Go follow them on Twitter @HIVE Digital Technologies. Go check out their stock on the NASDAQ. It's HIVE. Very easy to spell. And again, it's a dual engine. Not only do they focus on Bitcoin mining, they're also focusing on the AI revolution as well. If you guys enjoyed today's Friday show as much as I did, Frank was dropping so much sauce, so much signal. Make sure to smash that like button. Again, consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin. Go enjoy the weekend. Go outside, touch some grass, get some sun, enjoy some steak, enjoy some family. And then, of course, we'll see you back on Monday for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live. Take care, everybody.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.